The Niners. Wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk told Ryan Clark that he's been taking negotiations personal, and the offers so far have affected him. Aiyuk's first choice is to stay in San Francisco, but he's comfortable playing elsewhere if they're willing to trade him. Aiyuk is meeting with the 49ers today, a meeting that he requested. All right, that's one piece of news. Then real quick, the other piece of news, the Warriors have officially picked up Kevon Looney's team option for next year. So Looney will be under contract with the Warriors, at least to start free agency at $8 million. They could have waived him and paid him just $3 million. Kevon Looney, the Warriors have exercised their team option on him. Aiyuk looks a little more fraught with danger, if you know what I mean, Evan.
Yeah, I think there's been smoke there, and this is maybe not a full-fledged fire, but that catches my eye, certainly more than scrubbing of social media, or even a couple of years ago when Debo asked for a trade. I always felt like, those sort of things are like negotiating tactics, but when you call a meeting with a team, you want a face-to-face, it's to get on the same page, but I do believe that. His first choice is to be here, he wants to be a 49er, but it sounds like the Niners aren't willing to budge. They don't have any reason to budge off of whatever the offer is that they've thrown at him. And so they figured probably they could just wait him out. I think Brandon Aiyuk wants an answer, because if he is not going to get the money he thinks he deserves, it sounds to me like he also believes he could get it somewhere else.
It's very interesting, because if Brandon Aiyuk calls the boss and says, hey, I want to come in and talk about some things. Sure, come on in and talk about some things. The only thing he wants to talk about is why they're not offering him more money. And when they tell him why, whatever that answer is, he's going to say, well, then you got to try to get me out of here. Or they're going to say, well, we don't. This is where organizations have all the leverage.
Especially in football. We
don't have to do anything. So to use a Stephen A. Smith, Brandon Aiyuk better be careful, because the 49ers do have all the leverage. I mean, this is the other thing. It's comparable to the Warriors. The 49ers re-signed Deebo Samuel, but there was some, not acrimony, but there was a doubt about it. Bosa leaked into
almost to week one.
Exactly. So one of two things is going to happen. Either the same thing's going to happen with Aiyuk, and he'll be in here eventually, or they're essentially setting a precedent, or not a precedent, but they're essentially breaking a precedent, and Ayuk's the odd man out, just like the Warriors are kind of doing the same thing, and Clay happens to be the odd man out. Circumstances have changed.
Well, first thing with the 49ers, so because of their track record, I think we've all just assumed that they're just going to get this done.
Right. I kind of have.
Whether it's all the way back to Kittle, Trent, Warner, heck, even Juszczyk. Obviously, Debo and Bosa are the most recent too. He'll get his money. It's just a matter of when it'll happen in July. Okay, I think there's also a two-way street there. I think those players that I just named also believed that they were going to eventually get the money that they deserved. When I hear Brandon Aiyuk ask for a meeting with the 49ers, I sense doubt from his camp that he's going to get what he thinks he deserves. The money, the idea that the number that he has in mind is not clearly the same number that the Niners have in mind. But again, because they have a first-round wide receiver who could be his potential replacement, because they got other ways to potentially overcome, not having Aiyuk on the field, a la McCaffrey, Debo, Kittle, all these other weapons, he doesn't have any leverage. So unlike the rest of the contract negotiations the Niners have been through in recent memory, I don't feel like Aiyuk believes that he's just going to get paid, that he's just going to get his money. And if he can't, I think that's what today's about clarifying. That if you're really not going to budge, then either I need to acquiesce or I need to figure out if I can get a trade. Because you're right, Steiny. Unlike Klay Thompson, who can go test free agency, go find out what his market is, Brandon Aiyuk's under contract. He still has a fifth year that he has to play or not play under, and the Niners do not have to do anything basically to give in to him at this point.
Right. It also kind of tells me that, okay, let's take Bosa, and he's in contract negotiations, and it gets to this point. And Bosa has a number, and the 49ers have a number. If, let's just say the 49ers number was 25. Bosa clearly had a belief in his agents that the 49ers at some point would come off 25 and bump up a little bit, and maybe Bosa would come down. I think you might be right. Aiyuk is starting to get may have the feeling that they've told him this is it. Take it or leave it. Here's the one thing I love, just off the top of your head, yes or no. I'll just say the way it is. Aiyuk is meeting with the 49ers today, a meeting he requested. Think his agent's there?
Yes.
He better be. You know what I mean? Like if...
Yeah, I mean, well, because I'm 100% with you. What else could the meeting be about? It ain't about role. I mean, that might be a secondary conversation, but it's about, hey, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that, you know, I want 28 and you want me to take 26, and I just want to make sure that that's, like, is that really the difference we're talking about here?
Well,
hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, no, for me, it's about Nick Bosa was at this point, and everyone, it was kind of a snooze fest. It'll happen. Debo got to this point with some stuff going on social media, but it got done. The fact that Aiyuk, if this is true, requested a meeting and is in the Bay Area to talk to John Lynch, that tells me that you're right, doesn't feel nearly as confident that they're going to do right by him in the end.
Yeah, I think it's also a reflection of the kind of guy that Aiyuk is. You know, he doesn't want to just play telephone. Like, he'd rather just get it out in the open. And that might also be beneficial for the 49ers, but it does absolutely make sense because there's other things that have kind of, I don't know, on the peripheral occurred, such as McCaffrey getting a restructured deal. You know, the quote-unquote whispers of Trent Williams wanting a new deal. The Niners apparently not picking up the fines for Brandon Aiyuk not being at minicamp. You know, all these things are just breadcrumbs that lead me to believe that Aiyuk is not certain about his future in San Francisco. And I think that's why he wants to talk to the general manager or a member of the front office, is because I think he just wants to get on the same page as him.
You know, I remember saying this at the time, and I'm not saying it was the reason the Niners drafted a receiver, but I do think the fact that the 49ers now have Pearsall, and I get it, he's a rookie, and on balance, they would take a step back at that position if Aiyuk's not there. But sorry, Brandon Aiyuk, the 49ers have some built-in protection right now. And the built-in protection obviously is the collective bargaining agreement, and the fact that they don't have to do anything. But I was thinking at the time when they drafted Pearsall, like, if they really think this guy's really good, they don't have to do anything with Aiyuk and just say, don't come into camp and then risk losing a year of essentially your eligibility.
And because of the way that football is set up, generally holding out doesn't work for the player unless you're really willing to just eat it.
Right.
I mean, because you're just not going to get paid. I mean, that's why a lot of guys give in. We heard last year about Lamar Jackson being a holdout candidate, or the Ravens shopping him, and then they ponied up and gave him big money. Like, players that are, I'm not saying Aiyuk is as good as, maybe like a 2-time MVP, but generally players at some point have to give in. I think the Niners have done a really good job at not making it appear like their players are giving into them.
Or that they
reward them.
They might not want a guy, but they're not going to let everybody know they might not want a guy. What do you think's going to happen with Aiyuk?
I think they eventually come to terms, but the one thing I do take away from this is we're going to find out quickly if they actually are on the same page or not. Because if they're not, I do think, I mean, I've said this before, like of Debo and Bosa and Aiyuk, this is the one that I feel most likely could end with a split. Like Aiyuk could be traded.